Scott, we are live. It's good to be back. How are you?
Good, good. How you doing?
Good, good. So last time we were talking about the Burr method and that specific real estate strategy. Now, you and I were briefly talking about some Airbnb stuff, and you mentioned that you had gone down to the Oregon coast just recently. How was that?
It was great. It was almost snowing here 2 weeks ago, and then it got into the 70s and 80s, so everyone wanted to get out. And it was full. It was packed with people down there, and I have this annoying habit of I'll walk into a business and I'll analyze its business model, and it just randomly sometimes. And the hotel I was at, I mean, the rooms were pretty small, but it was like 350 a night. It seemed a little bit high to me. And there's a lot of rooms down there. And I mean, this hotel had like 100 rooms. I'm like, wow, this is a pretty major operation here. And yeah, I have been looking at Airbnb in general too. It's, I think at first when the pandemic happened, people kind of freaked out, and a lot of the Airbnb hosts had some serious issues, because no one was traveling. But it looks like things are really coming back now.
Now realistically, you're the Oregon coast. I mean, I know it's beautiful down there, but it's not Hawaii.
No, and this is more than we paid when we went to Hawaii.
Wow.
A couple of months ago. And I was thinking about it. It's like, why is that? Well, one thing is not everyone wants to fly right now. They want to take a little trip where it only takes, 3 or 4 hours in the car.
Right. Yeah.
Get somewhere different, better, beach, ocean, sun, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Out of your current environment and within driving distance, instead of putting on the mask, getting the COVID test, going through quarantine.
Right. When we went to Hawaii, it was like launching a rocket ship or something. I had a whole folder of all the paperwork for everybody, and it was like a checklist with 10 or 15 steps. It was fairly involved. Yeah.
Now, how is it down there in regards to people amongst other people? Was everyone wearing masks? Are they trying to stay apart, or?
Honestly, people are a little bit exhausted. I think people should take precautions for sure, but I think also there's an exhaustion, and plus a lot of people around here have been vaccinated now. 20 or 30%, I think. So.
Yeah, they're saying that it's up almost to like 50% across the nation, but it seems
in certain age groups for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like in Washington, it was 50 plus for a while, and they just opened it up yesterday to 16 and over, so it's wide open now.
Oh, it's completely open now. That's good. Yeah. So it seems like that around New York too. There's more and more people out and about. Mm-hmm. In New York we walk a lot, so you notice the difference between when everybody is just no one's out, and there's less cars, there's less people, there's less walking, there's almost no one in the park or parks. And then this comes around and the vaccine's being rolled out, and now you can't find
nice
a place
at the same time.
Yes, and people are tired of being inside, and you can't find a place to sit in the park.
Wow.
So it seems like restaurants are really opening up. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that we went to a place called Cannon Beach, and it looked like it was 100% full, and it's like a 5-mile long beach, and
really
just every single place was full. It's a big beach, so it wasn't too crowded either, but it was at maximum capacity pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could see that people, hunkered down, not traveling, not flying, not going on vacations, not going out to restaurants, and just kind of being real precautious about things. They want to maybe do a few things like eat in a restaurant again. So.
Yeah, and go on a simple trip where there's less logistics, less to worry about. We actually stayed in a hotel, but I'm pretty sure there were Airbnb options around there too, and.
Well, it seems like just going back to that, the Airbnb options seem like a pretty good, whether it's short-term or not, who knows, right? But a pretty good short-term rental real estate play.
It's a really good one. It's you can essentially, if you want to go all the way with it, you can build your own hotel empire. And there are some people that do that. They start collecting them, and they end up having quite a few of them. If you, of course, the location matters a lot. For short-term rental, it has to be in a central location where, someplace where people are going to on a regular basis, whether for fun or for work or for an event or whatever. But I mean,
do you think a lot of the Airbnb entrepreneurs are renting and then subletting, or?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because that is a whole niche. There are guys that just go around and rent and then turn into an Airbnb and make the difference, and they even do it at scale once they figure it out. When you think about that model, you're like, some things come up in your mind, like, well, I don't want to go, clean all. I'm going to become like a hotel maid, like I'm going to go clean all these things, So, but there's an ecosystem. There are, cleaning operations now that are specializing in Airbnb. There are even apps that can help you kind of automate some of the tasks of letting people in. There's smart locks. There's a bunch of little tricks that have kind of developed over the past few years to smooth out the whole process.
I actually knew someone who did that pretty successfully with their own apartment that she was renting out. What I found from a landlord perspective, kind of out here,
you're in a great location for it, by the way.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe not exactly right now, but I don't know. Is it coming back or?
Yeah, well, I think the landlords are fairly opposed to it. So they don't want you to.
Right.
They don't want you to. I don't know if they have clauses in their lease agreements or whatever. But it's
some of them are opposed to it. Some of them are open to it. Apparently.
Yeah, some are open. You got to find those, and some are opposed to it. And then some you're just in there and you don't care about the lease, and they're not going to kick you out. From a New York perspective, it's very pro renter.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll just rent it out. And at one point, one of the years, like we were renting in Manhattan here, and they, the person directly next to us was renting an Airbnb, and it was actually a problem to the people around them.
Sure. Yeah.
Because of the noise, they wouldn't be there to open it up, so it didn't have the right instructions, so they would knock on other people's doors.
Right. Yeah.
So then the landlord had to address it, but I feel like even then they were pretty slow to address it. It was interesting. So, but that is a play. I mean, that is a play, especially if you don't have large amounts of down payment to purchase an expensive piece of real estate and start renting it out. That definitely is a play. What do you think?
I mean, cash flow is so important, and especially as you get into multiple properties, and if you've got a way to tweak the cash flow and get another 10, 20, 25, 30% or more cash flow, I mean, that can really be helpful.
Right.
Plus, I kind of like the idea of getting properties that you might want to stay in yourself sometimes. I mean, there's always doing it in your own backyard, but what if there is a place that you like to vacation or visit or whatever, and you could get a cool place there? Because a lot more people are adopting this new lifestyle now where, well, work from home can be work from home, but it can also be work from Hawaii, work from, a beach somewhere, work from Puerto Rico. A lot of people are figuring that out now.
Yeah, and especially, I think it's kind of like the theory of management companies for single-family homes versus management companies for, say, a 50 to 100 unit apartment complex, where there's really good professional operators at the 50 unit, 100 unit plus realm versus the onesie twosies. But if you look at the Airbnb structure and that business model, it's almost like I'm assuming in some of these bigger cities they're going to have that infrastructure and have really good well-run property management companies do the cleaning, the logistics, and then that's when it starts making a little bit more sense because it's not as there's not as much room for error.
Yeah, and if you're going to take the effort to go through it and learn how to do it well, you know, you might as well consider that you could do it with multiple properties too, because you might as well leverage that skill set. And there are management companies that will do everything for you. It's just that they will, you know, take a fairly sizable fee for that. I don't know if it's worth it or not. It may be in some cases, but then there's kind of an in-between place too, I think, where there's an existing ecosystem out there of, you know, contractors or third party individuals who are used to dealing with Airbnbs. They've already kind of, you know, gone through the process. So they're used to it, and you know, they can sign into an app. They can get a message, you know, when they're expected to kind of, you know, come and help.
The automation for the keys, all that can be.
The smart locks are really cool. I mean, you just, you know, I mean, you can control them right from your app. You can be in another state and let someone in, or you can give them a code that's just for them that, you know, doesn't work anymore after they leave. There's some cool little innovations that, you know, you can even control the temperature of your home, right? On an app now from, you know, another state. So,
yeah, it's getting a lot of what we can do is getting real easy with technology.
And Airbnb is ideal right now because, you know, not everyone wants to even be in the, you know, in a hotel that might feel more crowded to them versus a, you know, a single family home or a condo or something. So it's
like you have your own space. It's not as the community areas. Well, you know, there aren't like community areas necessarily as there are in hotels where you're around restaurants, around pools, and, you know, depending on people's comfort level, they could feel like they would like to do that or not.
Clearly, there's you know, a rapidly growing demand for Airbnb places right now, and that trend will probably continue. You know, people get in, you know, they create a new habit, and then even if circumstances change, they've still got that habit. They, you know, they had a good experience. They're pretty likely to do it again.
Yeah. Yep. And it feels like with this opening up of, you know, like we were just talking about, going to little mini vacations within driving distance, the Airbnb popularity, that the real estate markets are also in these subsets, or, you know, like subsets of like Manhattan and Seattle and Austin and Tennessee and Florida. The market's pretty frothy.
I mean, it's pretty crazy.
I mean, you're saying, and I was just talking to a good friend of mine in Las Vegas, and he was saying that there are, as soon as it's a real seller's market right now, and as soon as there's an offer, there's literally 30 offers on that one piece of property. And I mean, if you think about it like that, 29 of those people, it's got to be very frustrating for, because they're not going to get the deal. And it's really the more, it's almost like an auction mentality. Which you're overpaying. You're for sure going to overpay.
Inventory is really low, and there's a number of things that are happening out there, which, you know, maybe we mentioned those before. I don't know, but clearly with society, you know, living in a different way now, people's needs have changed. So a lot of people's a lot of what people are looking for in a home has changed. They want more space. They want to be more out in the country, and everyone's just kind of shifting like musical chairs. So in Seattle, people moved from downtown Seattle out into the suburbs. They moved from the suburbs 45 minutes out, and then some of the people there moved out to Idaho, which is apparently totally booming now. I think it's up like 20% in the past year.
Is it really? Like Coeur d'Alene?
Yeah. Yep, right out there.
Yeah, that...
Because it was a nice place, very affordable. You can drive there from Seattle. People are familiar with it.
Yeah, I actually really like Coeur d'Alene, and it's only, I mean, you know, it's from Seattle, it's what, a little bit over 5 hours drive.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's surprisingly close. Yeah.
So it's beautiful. You have Lake Coeur d'Alene there, and you have so many different, you know. The downtown little area is cool. There's little hip bars and restaurants, and And then there's, the waterfront condos, the waterfront homes, and after 2008-9 with the real estate crash, it got pretty bad down there. But it's good to see something like that coming back in a strong way.
Yeah, and I think people, some people have just kind of dropped out of the job market. Maybe they had some savings, maybe they're able to work remotely, maybe they've got gigs going, maybe they've got investments going. Maybe they don't feel like they have to work all the time. Maybe their income is lower though, so they want a cheaper place to live where it still has very nice amenities, natural beauty, all of this. So
right,
people's needs are changing, but at the same time, a lot of people don't want to move. They don't want the hassle of moving, during these tumultuous times. So there's really limited inventory. So yeah, when something comes up, I mean, people just, they want it like, it's not just like they want to buy a cake and eat it. They want to actually buy the place where they're having to live every moment of every day, and, way more time spent there than they did before. So it's just, it's so visceral, like this need for to have a nice space that meets your needs. Yeah.
Yeah. It's happening over here too in New York. I mean, from a migration citywide, you're seeing a lot of people leave Manhattan due to the pandemic, and obviously they're moving across the country, but just if you're just talking like citywide, they are moving from Manhattan over to some of the other boroughs that are a little bit less expensive, but also near the city, Brooklyn, Queens, this sort of thing. And what's interesting is I know a gentleman who owns a electrical company over here, and he says that one bedroom condos are starting to move again and fly off the shelves, while 2-3 bedroom are just kind of sitting. So it's interesting to see. It's like it feels like people could move completely out and away for into the 5 boroughs, or they could then at some point turn and be like, okay, I want to be in Manhattan again, and then come back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 18 to 24 months here. But why do you think in Seattle people are fleeing the condo areas of, say, downtown and going out further to the suburbs? Is it?
I think it's. Part of it's this idea a lot of people have that, I moved to the city because it had all this cool stuff going on, and all that cool stuff went away.
Yeah.
Everything closed down.
That totally makes sense. So you have none of the benefits of the city, but the expense of the city still.
And you're just, stuck in your little apartment, with nowhere to go, nothing to do, no people to see.
Yeah.
And plus there's the occasional riot and protest, and crime has increased. I mean,
yeah. Well, and when I look at it, like we were just talking about moving, statewide or a little bit out of the city or within the state somewhere, but say, I don't know, let's just say like Wenatchee or something like that. If you are selling at the top of the market right now, it's a seller's market in Seattle. So if you're selling at the top of the market.
Oh, yeah. Some of these people can retire. They've got a lot of equity.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Some of these people, they're looking at, hey, I wasn't planning to retire yet, but all of a sudden I'm sitting on a huge amount of equity, and it's enough to buy a house outright in one of these nearby communities and just chill for a while. Yeah. I mean,
it's so interesting because when I lived in Seattle and I had a property for I bought it for $434,000, and now that same property is like $1.2 million, and it's nothing special.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, it was okay. Like, it was a house, and had a yard, and the landscaping was okay, but it was
that's happened in the last 5-6 years. It's
so crazy. So if you have a really nice house and then you held it for, say, a decade after the crisis or whatever of 2008, and then you're sitting on, say, 1.52 million, you liquidate that and go to a less expensive, really cool, safe, smaller city, and spend a decent amount on a, like an empty nester type home, if that's where these, where some of these people are at, they can retire.
And these remote areas, the whole thing was they were remote because there were no job opportunities, right? But this whole remote working thing, which was all, I've been doing that for a long time as a when I've been doing software development, I've done it remotely. That was one of the first occupations to kind of allow that. But now, like almost, so many people are doing it, and it brings those remote areas more into the economy. So even though you're 2 or 3 hours away from a physical economic center, you've got super high speed internet. And funny thing is, I mean, I know some people in different parts of the world, like Nepal, let's say, and with Elon Musk's Starlink satellite internet coming in, that's something that's been talked about for a long time, by the way. A lot of people have tried to do it, but it looks like he's actually doing it. And it has the potential to even, go further out. And like you can literally be in the middle of the Himalayas, and apparently you're going to be able to get super high speed internet, which is
really,
that could change things from a real estate perspective too, because it brings new uses to real estate in even fairly what we considered before pretty distant places.
Well, living and working and travel, I mean, that's going to hit travel too. To give you an idea, let's say when I was traveling throughout Australia, there would be parts that had good internet and then parts that were hit and miss. And you don't really know until you get there. So yeah, you can do speed tests and blah, blah, blah. But most of us are just like, okay, this is vacation. We want to go there. We want to stay in this area. And, we really like the way this Airbnb looks or what have you. And then we go. And then sometimes you go there and you have good internet, and sometimes you go there and you don't. Then what was so interesting is we actually ended up going to Tanzania one time too. So we went back to, that area of the world, and we went to, sorry, not Tanzania, Tasmania. And we went to this really remote place that were just like these little tiny, they weren't huts. I mean, they were really well-made modern houses, but they were small with the necessities you need. And then you go on your back porch and there would be all the wallabies.
Wow.
And it had the fastest internet.
Nice.
and it was one of the most remote spots. So that's a big factor, especially for, Westerners who like to still have internet on the go. Maybe they want to have access to social media. Maybe they do have to work though. But if they have strong internet connection, they would be able to work and take that vacation maybe they wouldn't have taken prior to. So that could be a huge thing for travel and people, where people travel and how long they stay and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've mentioned it before, but this whole kind of digital nomad lifestyle that you and I got kind of introduced to rather early, it's something that now a lot more people could potentially do. So tying that back even with the Airbnb idea as well, I mean, you could, potentially, if you want to think about, constructing different kind of lifestyle, I mean, you could basically travel around the world and do the, do this remote work stuff, or you could also invest around the world or invest around the country and have different places you can stay. We just don't need to necessarily be tied to one place quite as tightly as we were before.
100%. I agree with that 100%. Now you're at the age where you can be geographically free, and you can, work on vacation. You can take more vacations. The culture is just shifting, and I think from a COVID perspective, that has sped things up probably, I don't know, a decade.
Yeah. It really speeded things up. Yeah.
And it also was a very real, because out of necessity, it was a very real necessity to downsize. And then people are like, oh, wait a minute, we can do this. Oh, wait, the cost of goods are going up. Let's just say in retail. I got a buddy in retail actually, and he said that over the last couple of years, the cost of goods and that sort of thing is going up 12% year over year. And if you're in a retail business with small margins, that doesn't work. You got to go, and raise the prices on your consumer, obviously, which is probably what they're going to do anyway. But being that they downsize and they don't need as much space, that also affects the bottom line in the opposite direction. So I think that you're going to see more and more of that happening and faster versus just like this theory that, oh, hey, we don't need as much space as an organization. And then you get so much bureaucratic pushback. It's like, okay, there's a pandemic. You're forced to do X, and now you don't need as much space. So you're more profitable and can survive. Or in the case of, spots that like restaurants and stuff that are so unfortunate to see those mom and pop restaurants, going down around the nation. But I see it in New York all the time, and it's just a different deal now.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly a transformative time and in a lot of different aspects of society and the economy. And it definitely pays attention to, look at those changes, what's going away, what's emerging stronger. And this Airbnb short-term model is clearly taking off and, becoming more and more popular. And one interesting thing I've seen too is that, in these downtown areas, that's like the last place where people seem to want to live right now. But it could be at some point when, as things are opening up again, people may want to visit again still. And real estate is actually, it's gone crazy everywhere around downtown Seattle, but in the downtown areas in the whole country in general, real estate has gone down in many cases. There's very little demand for it. So there could possibly be an emerging opportunity there. I mean, it makes sense to look at that and watch it over the next few months.
I agree. What's great about that also, that Starlink deal with the internet reaching out to maybe people who wouldn't have had it before, is it also helps the less fortunate people who didn't have access to the internet in order to maybe, do some type of commerce or some type of, let's say, content.
Especially globally.
Yeah, exactly. Like and let's just say in Africa or Nepal or wherever, where the opportunities were what the opportunities were because of the of not being able to have the internet, and then that could level the playing field just a little bit, which is nice to see for the
definitely at least for some people
in those areas
who can fully utilize it and kind of link in. Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think is more, like, from a practicality standpoint, like what is, looking at all this stuff, like the migrations and the prices and these depressed markets, but then these markets, some of these, little micro markets that, and when I say micro markets, like around the country, like Seattle and Austin, Texas, and these ones.
Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene that are, like what's practical at this point?
I think it still goes back to the fundamentals of, effective real estate investing. And that really means like not just rushing out and having a real estate agent show you 5 properties and choose one of them and yay, I'm a property owner. You're a property owner. That's great. But
right.
you might have bought something really at retail. You probably will do well
or
with
above
it.
retail.
Yeah, or above retail. But you might have to hold it a pretty long time to, get it to appreciate more than the, pretty high price that you just paid for it. Why not seek out what hasn't popped yet? What doesn't have that magic glow over it, so, where the tech worker's family is so excited and they can just walk in and live their life there. Why not go a little bit outside that area? Why not look at homes that are not exactly turnkey? Maybe even take a little time and look at homes that actually have problems and no one wants to buy them. They've just been sitting there, and figure out if you can solve some of those problems. Those deals are still out there. I think there's a lot of people looking for them, and it's harder to find them, and it takes a little more effort. You might have to go a little further out. You might have to solve a little bigger problems. But if you can find a deal now, I mean, and hold on to it a little bit or fix the problem, obviously the rewards can be quite immense because of that massive demand.
Yeah, and I would think that I would definitely think that that not getting into something that's turnkey, meaning like everything's remodeled, the paint, the kitchen, the bathroom, the the basement or whatever it is. Like everything's remodeled.
That's being like a customer in someone else's real estate business.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine for some,
Yeah.
yeah, someone else did the work and they created that equity and then you're cashing them out. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Can still work sometimes.
it's almost like, I feel like in some of these areas, it's almost like the stock market and tech stocks being, say, some of them being so overvalued that it really is a gamble. It really is speculative in nature. And it's just like, okay, you have this, social proof thing going on where everybody's making offers. So you have this, you don't want to miss out. You need to get your home. You need to get your, maybe kids in a specific school. So you're bidding. And then what? You paid maybe, 10 or 20% over asking. And in Seattle, if that's $1 million place, that's like 1.1, 1.2. That's like a full down payment that you could literally be wasting.
I mean, it happens a lot now. And, if you're not really a real estate investor, if you're, got your, an entrepreneur or you're a tech worker or, you've got a career or whatever, and you just really need, for personal and family reasons, you need a really nice home and you just want to move into it. You don't want to fool around at all. I mean, then you need to make the decision you need to make. But if you're looking at it from an investment point of view, I mean, you want to take that extra time to find a deal where you're going to be able to create some equity faster. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
That's how I feel anyway.
And then it comes down to, okay, if you're looking at this kind of propped up economy where it feels like no one's talking about a lot of this stuff, meaning like, the forbearance and the current administration like pushing for loan modifications. It's almost like you're living in this false sense of reality. What are your thoughts on that whole deal and like where does that end?
Yeah, a new one was just announced too, by the way. There's a first-time home buyer grant, I guess, being proposed pretty seriously. At first they were saying $15,000. Now they're saying $20,000 or $25,000, if you can believe it. That's a pretty fair amount of money. It's got some qualifications. It's not for everyone. I guess it may be that your parents and you have never owned a home. So it's like first time generational. But there are a few loopholes. Like it's okay if you owned a home, but you lost the home or you don't own it anymore or something like that. But yeah, clearly there are things being done to prop up this market. And there were all of the, mortgage forbearance periods, and then rolling those into loan mods now is being pushed quite heavily by the administration. So yeah, there's a lot propping things up. The big question is, does the stimulus all run out sometime? And it looks like there's a lot of people on unemployment that will run out towards the end of the year as well. It looks like there are a lot of efforts being made to smooth that out. But it certainly makes sense to keep tabs on that. I mean,
i.e. forbearance and stuff like, is that what you're saying?
I mean, all of it. These trillions and trillions of dollars being pumped into the economy,
right,
which also affect people's abilities to buy and keep homes.
Forbearance, moratorium, like rent,
super low interest rates.
Yeah, moratoriums on renters.
Yeah, and people getting unemployment, which means they can keep paying their loan payments and everything. Obviously, if there are a bunch of foreclosures at some point, that will increase inventory, and it would have an effect on prices. Whether that means they stabilize for a while or they might go down a little bit in some places, who knows? There's also there's been massive increases in commodity prices, including lumber, and it's really expensive and crazy to try to build homes now too. So
Yeah, where does yeah? I mean, so you have the stimulus money coming in, you have the protection from defaulting on your mortgage, then you have the renters that may not have to pay rent currently but are collecting unemployment. So it's almost kind of like the can is just being kicked down the road.
yeah, I agree. There is that feeling. Yeah, yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, what happens, I mean, I guess in places that are really hot, like Seattle or Austin or whatever, the unfortunate situations, seems like those type of properties may get scooped up fairly quick, being that there is, people bidding 10, 20, 30% over asking.
If you want to be safer, I guess what you need to think about is, and my Marxist professor at UC College, who I learned a lot about economics from, he always said that this globalization trend is moving it's moving us from a world where there used to be the first world countries and the third world countries, and it's basically combining everything together. So you now see a very strong middle class in what we used to consider third world countries, and you're starting to see an emerging, second and third world conditions in first world countries to some extent. I mean, there's a lot more people living in tents and RVs now, moving in with friends and relatives, and that's just a trend. And this whole talk about the K-shaped recovery, I mean, basically all that means is that things are getting better for some people and things are getting worse for other people, and that's clearly one of the trends. So in terms of real estate investing, if you want to be safe, you probably want to invest in properties that would be appealing to the people who are economically successful, or nearby them, maybe not right in their neighborhood, but maybe within, a few minutes of it. So because that area might grow, and again, definitely look at the border areas. I mean, I think that gives you a measure of safety. If you go into an area where, the demographic in that area is people that, things are getting harder for them, I mean, there's more of a risk that in the future, if things, continue to be hard for certain groups and foreclosures happen, those areas could be hit more. So.
Yeah. Well, what happens, like, if you look at that and, these unemployment numbers are a little bit of a farce, because the people who dropped out of unemployment because their unemployment will run out, they won't be counted in the numbers anymore, but they'll still be unemployed.
Yeah.
So that number is not real. So when you look at,
and the inflation numbers are not real. We don't have just 2% inflation.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a second here. But what happens when millions of people can't afford to live in a home or rent in that scenario? Maybe even rent because the city's too expensive. They don't have a job. Like what?
This gets into a really difficult area, and I wasn't even sure that we should talk about this, because it becomes controversial and difficult and almost kind of painful to talk about, right? But
yeah,
we're seeing growing numbers of homeless or nearly homeless or more homeless people, and it's tragic. Yeah. It's really sad. And being guys that think about real estate, I mean, anyone who's in the real estate industry should think about this and not just like be angry that there's, these unwashed people living in your park where you like to go with your kids and, have peace and quiet. I mean, yeah, of course we want those nice spaces, but people need some place to, put their bodies too.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying I have an answer to that, but I think people should think about it.
Sure.
And, even from an investment point of view, it could be that the governments will be forced to open up what are now very strict zoning codes, probably overly strict, and they partly contribute to the problem because you can't build cheap housing. What if some municipalities would open up zoning to where you could build communities of, smaller homes with simpler building materials, not like a shanty town, but something where, the rents could be a lot cheaper. And, the other thing to think about is what what brings people, actual, happiness in the place where they live. It's not only the material, the amount of space, the condition. It's not just that. It's also a lot of what people are missing actually in modern society, I think, is this sort of community and tribal experience that we evolved with, that we evolved to kind of need that. So if someone could figure out how to create communities of, inexpensive housing that was, that had like a theme that brought in people with similar interests, like let's say art, and you could have art amenities, you could have like a sculpture area, you could have, art studios, like things like this, like something where it's not just like a bunch of people who had to buy little tiny homes to live in, but it's like, no, you've got this whole space, and because you've got some, maybe there's some, way to get into that community that kind of screens you to be, the kind of person who might do well there.
Sure.
I think we have to look at alternative scenarios like that, alternatives to just everyone stuck in their own home, just thinking about themselves, not taking care of others. I think we have to actually go back to some of the old ways where we had these support networks and these stronger communities, more bonding and people really looking out for each other more. So something like that.
It's very different. Like if you compare, let's just say, the Western societies to more like different like Latin societies and stuff. It's much more, involved around family and community and that sort of thing. And it seems like, the bonds, and I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure if it's because of, if you grow up in Ohio and you're able to go to a college, and the college you choose in West Virginia, and then you go to West Virginia, and 4 years you get out and you interview for a bunch of different jobs, and the job that that you like the most lands you in Seattle. Like it throws you all over the country. Mm-hmm. So on one side there's this great opportunity of what you can do and where you can go, and on the other side it brings you away from your nucleus, if you will. It brings you away from your family to where, if you think about it from the standpoint of, okay, you're going to see them once or twice a year if you live East Coast to West Coast, and you only have a couple weeks off, and you want to take a vacation or you start a family of your own. Like you're going to see them once or twice a year, and when you start thinking about, okay, my mom and dad are not mine particularly, but just mine have since passed, but if you're looking at it like, okay, these people are 65, 70, 50, whatever it is, you think, okay, there's 20 years left, and if I'm going to see them once, I'm going to see them 20 more times, right? Versus
it really changes things.
Versus you, and God forbid you have even more distance, like cross country, and that, or not cross country, but out of the country type deal. Like your family lives in Europe, you live here, and then you're really only seeing them about once a year, right? So from that perspective, it gets a little bit tough. Where if you lived in the same city, well, maybe a lot of people don't want to live in the same city as their family, but if you did, you might see the same people that you have relationships with, like once a week. So. The opportunity cost of having opportunity also is there in regards to, the relationships. You gotta factor that in, but I don't think a lot of us think about that.
And American society is so individualistic, and that's had its benefits, and it's created problems as well. So we're in the world, we've contributed a lot of our ideas, like in the software development, a lot of it has to do with being able to independently think, but at the same time we have, like, as a society, I think we have a certain amount of there's definitely like a certain amount of dissatisfaction with the high level of individualism that we have. And that also may have come about due to we were kind of on top of the world after World War II economically. We were a very rich society compared to other places, and maybe for the first time, a lot of people did have the opportunity to live completely independently. But as things are changing, I mean, we're gonna have to like be open-minded about shifting how we live, and maybe it's not all just thinking about ourself. Maybe we need to come back to these family units, community units, tribal units, and think about living more efficiently so that more people can have a place to live and have a good life.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and this is definitely a conversation that'll take a long period of time to delve into. But
yeah, it's a big topic.
It's a big topic, and also from a social media aspect is really where I was going with that. That's definitely for another episode in the future here. But that's contributing to a lot of people's feeling of happiness, of sadness, of loneliness, of not feeling connected, and it is it's just it's an interesting time. I mean, it's not going away, so you got to figure out kind of how to be aware of it, but also balance it.
Yeah, and anyone out there who might be in government, who might be an architect or a community designer or town planner or whatever. I mean, we should all be thinking creatively about solutions to this, and also in terms of the, type of living arrangements and real estate and rentals that, become available to people.
Absolutely, Scott. Well, man, it has been good as always talking to you. I appreciate everything. And why don't we connect again on our next round?
Sounds great. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been awesome.
All right, Scott. Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you.
See ya.